Attention, duelists! It's time for another Bomb Squad VidCast! Hi, I'm Tim M. Sullivan, and with me I have...
Ethan Hawker, cause anime.
Yeah. And special guest returning from the Castle in the Sky podcast.
Hello, I'm Angie Hachiman.
Glad to have you back.
Glad to be back.
And now, today, we're going to talk about some serious business, because we talk about too many fun Marvel movies, so now we're going to talk about some serious films, which are the Yu-Gi-Oh! Films. So we're going to be dropping a podcast on the Yu-Gi-Oh! Film The Dark Side of Dimensions this week, when this is premiering. And so, in that spirit, wanted to talk about the other Yu-Gi-Oh! Films, because I picked the Dark Side of Dimensions for the main podcast episode, because I think that's the most character-driven film, and it has the best writing. We'll talk more about that on the actual podcast. But it doesn't quite fall in line with the sort of anime nostalgia month that we had lined up. So I thought we'd talk about some of the more nostalgic Yu-Gi-Oh! Films. So we got 3 films to talk about, and I bet you're thinking we're going to start with Pyramid of Light, right? Wrong, you dingus! There's a whole other movie that came out before that one. Did you know that there was a Yu-Gi-Oh! Series created by Toei in the 90s? What?
NANI?!
If you're a fan of the series, you probably already knew that. But that might not be quite as well known to people who aren't as versed in it. So we can talk about that briefly. Basically there was a 27-episode anime series created by Toei in 1998. And that was covering the first 7 volumes of the manga, which were largely glossed over in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters anime. Some certain details kind of got repurposed, like the first episode of Yu-Gi Dueling Kaiba. That was basically adaptation of the Death Tea arc, and also just kind of like episode 3 where he first meets them and gets the blue eyes and everything. And then, the Bakura episode in the middle of Duelist Kingdom, that's basically a retooling of the whole, tabletop RPG arc. All those did get animated in a form. It was just a 27-episode season that never made it outside of Japan, unfortunately. But you can buy the VHS copies on eBay for the low price of $1,800. So go buy it now!
What a good deal.
Yeah, absolutely. Who wouldn't spend
I need
that
more
money
Yu-Gi-Oh! In my life.
Who wouldn't spend that money on Yu-Gi-Oh! Tapes instead of 4K TV? So basically, after that series came out, there was a film that came out the next year in 1999. It was a 30-minute little theatrical release, which between 98 and early January 99, there was a card game being produced by Bandai, and I think in January they basically ceased production on that card game, and Konami started printing the OCG, which is what still exists today. And so I think this movie was basically made to promote the Konami card game, which was just coming out at the time, and there was a whole set that they built around the movie. So this was directed by Junji Shimizu. Some additional directing credits include various titles from the Precure franchise. He also directed 2 OVAs for the Hell Teacher Nube series. And his most recent directing credit is the Mazinger Z film Mazinger Z Infinity. So now that we've kind of introduced this one, let's talk our thoughts on it. Ethan, we'll start with you.
I enjoyed this for what it is. It very much, it kind of opens up on that duel with Yugi and Joey, and it feels like an advertisement in a way that it's pretty pervasive in the other 2 films, but is even more obvious than them. But it is charming. The aesthetic quality of the season 0 designs being sort of not quite what you see in those first episodes, really first episode of season 1 of Duel Monsters. Is pretty neat, but they're just kind of differently proportioned slightly. Everyone has bigger hands and they're slightly wider, so sort of more cutesy proportions. Miho is still weird. I don't know. I never watched season 0, so I'm always confused as to why she talks into the third person.
So what's funny about Miho is in the manga, she's literally just a one-chapter character where I think the plot was just like Honda or Tristan had a crush on her, and then she like rejects his advances or something, and that's all it was. But then when they were making the anime, they were like, we gotta get this Miho character, we gotta have 2 girls in the mix.
They also changed her personality.
Oh, of course. Yeah, well, yeah, no, I guess if you're gonna make her a recurring character, you have to futz with things a little bit, but yeah. Yeah, she does kind of look like a background character. But yeah, she's barely in this, for the most part. Mostly it's the wee green-haired boy whose name escapes me. God, that's how little of an impression he left. Was it Shogo or Shoujo?
Shogo, yeah.
Shogo, our second podcast featuring a Shogo. This one ends far differently. The overarching narrative is, pretty straightforward. Basically, it's like an episode of the show, because it's only 30 minutes long anyways. It just sort of sets up, like, it would be like a good one-off episode of the show, or like a two-parter of, Yugi helping wee lad, getting beat up by Kaiba's goons back when Kaiba was purely villain. I think it looks pretty solid overall. Like, as always, it's kind of fun seeing, like, the earlier Duel Monsters designs, too. As much as it is seeing the early character designs. I do like that Summon Skull is just called Demon. Beaver Warrior is just Beaver. Those are both very funny to me. Overall, I had a fun time with this one. It was kind of neat as someone who's, not super familiar with Season 0. I'm getting to take a look at this.
Awesome. Now, Angie, it sounded like you had a roast ready for this one, so let's hear what you had to say.
Yeah, it's very, very obviously a commercial. Like, there really isn't any depth to it at all. Like, not that I was expecting anything. I also enjoy how it's, like, not consistent with Season 0 or Duel Monsters at all. I like how Kaiba actually has, he does not have green hair this time.
Yeah.
It's just, like, it's not consistent with any Yu-Gi-Oh! Media at all. That's why I feel like it's very obviously just kind of promotional material. One of the scenes that I had to pause the movie because it was so funny was when the kid was all like, I have the red eyes black dragon, and then literally everyone stops what they're doing, drops whatever, and just looks around, the red eyes black dragon, what? Oh my god, that was hilarious. And then I also like how Yuki's like, oh no, it's Shogo. And then everyone's like, Shogo. I'm like, yeah, he's a kid from the neighborhood. It's like, who is this person? This is the only thing he shows up in, and he's completely forgettable. That's why no one remembers his name. But yeah, also, it's very typical of Kaiba to send goons to beat up children. Like, that's just like a total Kaiba move. And of course, like, he's also tapped into the security cameras all over Domino City, and he's just spying on people, and specifically inviting people with rare cards to his tournament just so he can steal them.
Sort of on that, I just kind of really, I do appreciate just how much of a big baby man Kaiba is, and how much funnier that makes him becoming like a sort of the Vegeta of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Franchise later. I feel like that just makes his eventual, like, face turn a lot funnier, because I just imagine them bring up, hey, remember that time you sent, like, two guys to beat the shit out of me, to steal my cards? Like, what was up with that? I don't know. I find it incredibly, like, endearingly goofy.
So I wanted to mention that Season 0 and Duel Monsters had completely different, like, voice casts in Japanese. Kaiba's voice actor in this movie is Hikaru Midorikawa, who some people might recognize as Marth from the Fire Emblem franchise, and he's been voicing Marth ever since, like, the 90s OVA. So that's an interesting sort of, like, fact. And also, Yugi's voice actor in the movie is actually a woman named Megumi Ogata, and she's quite famous for voicing a lot of young male characters such as Kurama from Yu Yu Hakusho, Yukio from Cardcaptor Sakura. She's also Makoto and Nagito from Danganronpa. It's kind of interesting how big the voice actors from Season 0 actually are. It's interesting that the cast changed for Duel Monsters, and I'll talk about the Duel Monsters cast later because I watched all the movies in Japanese.
Nice, thank goodness we have parody. Also, for just a second, I thought you said Yu-Gi-Oh! From Cardcaptor Sakura. I was very confused.
Oh, no,
they both got
Yu-Gi-Oh!
cards.
Yu-Gi-Oh!
Yeah.
No, it just took me a second. I mean, yeah, you're right, the Clow cards. God, people are captured in cards in the opening of Duel Monsters. Pegasus does that.
True.
Pegasus is a card captor. This is all coming together.
Pegasus is a magical girl.
I mean, Yu-Gi-Oh! Is a magical boy anime in my opinion.
Yugi's a magical boy. He's magical in my heart.
It's one of those movies where I fully understand why I didn't watch it a second time. I watched it once when I watched Season 0 the first time, and I've since rewatched Season 0 like 3 or 4 times, but I never include the movie, and I finally realized why. It's boring.
Fair enough. Yeah, it's pretty blatant about basically just being a commercial for the card game, but I do think it's a fun watch. I enjoy it in the context of Season 0. Like, I think it's just kind of a nice little capper at the end whenever I revisit Season 0. There's some moments that I think are cool for me specifically, like, I really enjoy at the end when Yugi summons Meteor Black Dragon by fusing Red Eyes and Meteor Dragon. And the reason for that is because when I was younger, me and my brother played a game called Yu-Gi-Oh! Duelists of the Roses. In that game, you can fuse Meteor Dragon and Red Eyes Black Dragon to summon Meteor Black Dragon. In that game, he's a very powerful monster, so it was just like always really cool and fun summoning Meteor Black Dragon and then just like obliterating whatever monsters the opponent had against us. And so it was really cool to go back and revisit this and see that like this was the first appearance of Meteor Black Dragon, and there was like an anime version of Meteor Black Dragon. That was cool to see whenever I first watched this, and I do always enjoy that like final attack of him crashing down on the blue eyes. Yeah, overall there's not too much more to say. I do have 2 quick little bits of trivia that I want to talk about briefly. The first one, this movie is the only anime adaptation of Yu-Gi-Oh! That is fully cell animated and not animated digitally, which I think is neat, and it definitely gives it sort of a unique aesthetic. It looks a little bit different from every other Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime property, and that's kind of cool in a way. And then another little bit of trivia is that this movie is the first time in any anime adaptation that you see Yugi summon the Dark Magician besides the intro of Season 0. He doesn't actually summon it in the show, which I hadn't noticed until I looked that up. So I think that's interesting that his signature monster didn't get summoned until this movie.
Oh, I have another thing. Isn't this the first animated appearance of Rex Raptor?
That's true. We didn't bring that up. He has a very, very brief blink and you miss it cameo in this movie. It's just like Kaiba beating him in a duel and then he scoops and walks off.
The thing that I thought was very funny about this, because like it comes together with him fusing and creating the Black Meteor Dragon, but there's something very amusing about all this build-up for Red Eyes Black Dragon when he summons Dark Magician and summons Skull before, who are better monsters. They have a higher attack rating. They have more attack points. What the hell's an attack rating? What am I talking about? No, I don't know why. I find that very amusing that there's all this build-up and then it's like, hey, he's got 100 fewer attack points. But obviously they don't really advertise that as much as they do in the cartoons.
Well, I did think, like, this time around I kind of noticed a little bit of dialogue of the shopkeep lady being like, this monster has the potential for victory, but it won't bring you victory. It'll only give you the potential if you use the right cards.
Oh, on that note, I like how game store shopkeepers in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Universe are like fortune tellers.
It's true. They are very wise. So yeah, I think that's gonna do it for the first movie. So now we're going to talk about the 2004 film Yu-Gi-Oh! Pyramid of Light. This film was directed by Hatsuki Tsuji. He was an animator / storyboard artist on the Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monster series. He also directed GX, and he directed 23 episodes of Cardfight Vanguard. So he likes card game shows, evidently. And his most recent directing credit is a Lupin the Third movie, Prison of the Past. Basically, this movie came about... I briefly alluded to this on the Vampire Hunter D podcast, because this movie has something in common with Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust, in that it was an early 2000s thing where a US studio was just like commissioning Japanese studios to make a movie for them, like specifically for their market. So that was basically how Yu-Gi-Oh! Pyramid of Light came to be, was that the series was doing very well over here, and the card game was selling very well over here. So Warner Brothers, who owned the network Kids WB, were basically like, hey, let's commission the creators of the series to make a movie we can put in theaters and get some sweet ticket revenue. We can market it with trading cards. So yeah, it's basically just, it exists because a Hollywood executive willed it into existence. But I also think that for people who grew up watching the series on Saturday mornings on Kids WB, there's sort of a nostalgia to like that first experience watching it. I guess that's the best way to lead into Angie. You, having not watched the series until 2009, what are your thoughts on Pyramid of Light?
Oh yeah, so I don't really have nostalgia for this movie because I watched it after I had watched the series when I was like 14, 15 or whatever. And I didn't like it then, and I still don't like it now. It took me 3 days to watch this movie because my attention span was not enough to take in this movie all at once. So I broke it up into chunks over 3 days. It's very not story-oriented. It's definitely, it jumps from duel to duel to duel. Obviously, it feels like it's just trying to kind of promote new cards, especially how Kaiba and Yugi both use cards that they hadn't previously used in the series. So it's obviously like, okay, here we got some new cards that we want to show off. The story could have had potential, but they didn't really do a whole lot with it. It's just not as interesting as it could have been. Like I've always been more of a story character person when it came to Yu-Gi-Oh! So this just feels too much like duels with very little to them. So I'm not like fully invested on an emotional level into what's going on. Yeah, I don't know. I think I have more to say about it later, but I'll let Ethan give his thoughts.
Yeah, Ethan, what are your thoughts?
Sort of my background with this one too, as well, because I watched the show when it was on television, of course, but I didn't get to see it in theaters, which is a shame because I think that is absolutely the ideal place to see it. Is like on a large screen where it's really satisfying to see all your favorite characters doing cool shit, but now bigger, and their skin is slightly tanner, and there's more highlights because they had more of a budget.
It's very shiny.
It is a very shiny. Everybody looks like an action figure. I kind of love it. Even if it doesn't look like exceptionally better than like some of the better episodes of the television series, in a way that's unusual. That it feels kind of weird for like a theatrical animated thing to not look that good, and I don't really mean about it.
It's like the art had a bigger budget, but also like the animation feels stiffer. It's weird.
Yeah, I wonder if it was a storyboarding thing or something, because of the because I would imagine it was all still done in house. Like it wasn't something where it was done domestically and then shipped out. But there is some weirdness to it, or like Joey spending most of the film in his school uniform kind of stuff, and not his Duelist Kingdom outfit or his Battle City Tournament outfit. Yeah. It's kind of strange. I jokingly say this would be better titled Yu-Gi-Oh! The Legendary Super Egyptian, because if it has parallels to any Dragon Ball film, it's kind of like the Broly film, I guess, in that it's sort of set up with the usual rivalry aspect, and it sort of comes to a head with the rivals teaming up to battle a large man, a big beefy boy in Anubis, he has an okay design, but he's kind of like Broly. He's kind of a nothing burger of a character. I can't speak to the quality of the Japanese dub, but in the English language track, he has sort of a generic gravelly voice and evil man.
It is no longer time to duel. Now it is time to die.
And he's not terribly intimidating. Most of the fun is in the Kaiba duel, and the Kaiba dueling Pegasus in the opening, and Yugi dueling Kaiba. The actual Anubis duel is like, I could take it or leave it. And even as a kid, I didn't love it that much. Like, I think I liked the Kaiba stuff, and then, like, once it got into Anubis, like, it almost feels like it runs a little long. I still had fun with it, revisiting it. There's some good gags in there and that sort of thing. And I like the stuff in the Mindscape area, because I feel like it's some fun character interaction stuff. Like, that's the closest thing you get to character interaction stuff, is the only thing. Because usually they kind of use the duels to facilitate that a little bit in the series, but they don't really do it here, which is frustrating and bad.
Yeah.
My only major comment about, like, characterization or anything is, what's up with Tristan in this movie? Why is he so mean? He's, like, constantly making these really snide asides to Joey about how he's stupid and bad. And it's like, I don't remember that from the show.
That's like, I feel like when they were making this movie, it was like, they didn't have the same restrictions on TV, and so they just tried to make the dialogue as edgy as they could. So they were like, yeah, now we can say kill and die and make as many fart jokes as we want.
That's probably, I mean, yeah, it is kind of weirdly violent for, you know, I think it's particularly drawn into contrast because everyone is so familiar with 4Kids and that sort of thing for, like, the censorship stuff that they did, which was a bit, like, ham-fisted even for the day. But, like, yeah, like Joey punching a hole through a man, like it's Fist of the North Star. I mean, he's a mummy, but, like, it's still fairly gruesome.
I noticed that the mummy, when they're fighting the mummies, that was a little bit graphic for Yu-Gi-Oh! Well, I remember that they fought mummies, but I didn't remember that part specifically. In rewatching, it's like, oh, wow. I mean, I guess if they're undead monsters, it doesn't matter. So you can be as brutal as you want with them.
But I still had fun with it. Like, it was fun revisiting a nostalgic thing, and I think it's like a cute little thing for fans in particular. But yeah. Doesn't leave like a huge impression on me, even in the same way like the early Pokemon films did.
Right, yeah.
No, back to you, Tim.
Yeah. Angie, I just realized though, we didn't talk about the seiyus for this one yet.
Yeah, so because I know Ethan mentioned about Anubis's voice, I can confirm that Anubis has the stereotypical gravelly deep voice in the Japanese version as well. That's actually kind of an interesting thing. A lot of people think that the goofy voices that were added in the English dubs of Yu-Gi-Oh! Series was something that 4Kids decided to do. And it's not true. Yu-Gi-Oh! Has always had goofy voices, even in the Japanese version. So let's put that debate to rest.
Yeah, like Pegasus in particular, like, the dub basically just was the perfect impression of the Japanese version. Like, it's basically the same voice in both versions.
Greetings, little Yugi. I am Maximilian Pegasus.
Hello, nice to meet you, Yugi boy.
So Kaiba's voice actor in Duel Monsters is Kenjiro Suda, and this is actually his breakthrough role, was getting cast as Kaiba. He was 29 and he was kind of down on his luck, trying for many years to get successful in the voice acting industry. And when he got cast as Kaiba, it like basically changed his life. So the iconic like Japanese Kaiba voice is kind of what brought him to the popularity he has today. And I personally I love Hikaru Midorikawa. He's a great voice actor, but he is not as over the top as Kenjiro Suda. Like, Kenjiro Suda brings that over-the-top, absolutely crazy personality to Kaiba's character that is why he's so iconic.
光のピラミッドの効果で神は消えたぞ
Yugi, he's not voiced by anyone like super popular, but fun fact is, I believe he was a vocalist in like a band or something like that. Yu-Gi-Oh! Protagonists being voiced by musicians is something weirdly common. And other than that, the only other voice actor is Jinochi. Both of Jinochi's voice actors are actually popular seiyuu. I think I do like the DM voice a little bit better. He seems to... They're very similar in ways, but I think his DM voice actor is a lot... kind of fits his personality a little bit better.
手に入れただけで満足してんだろ。ま、戦わなきゃデュエリストもなんもねえけどよ。
あ？何勝手なこと言ってんだ。あ、わかったわかった。そんじゃこの俺様がお前たちをテストしてやるよ。おい、城之内。おめえたちが遊戯に挑戦する資格があるかどうか。バトルシティでベスト4に入ったこの城之内克也様が確かめてやるからね。
Now, when it comes to Yugi, I'm a little bit torn because I actually think Megumi Ogata, despite being a woman, actually is really good as Yugi. Like, there's something really sensual about her man voice that she has for Yami in season 0.
さあ、早いとこ始めようぜ、会話。
So that's always something that I kind of miss with Duel Monsters, but there's nothing wrong with his Duel Monsters VA.
やっぱり海馬くんは何も気づいていないんだ。
邪悪なものの正体もデュエルの中でつかめるかもしれない。やってやるぜ。
So yeah, my thoughts on this film. So like I do remember going to see this in the theater when it first came out. I think I went to see it opening weekend. Like I remember going with my brother and my buddies, and like we were all excited to see the Yu-Gi-Oh! Movie. I think it was probably that Saturday morning, and like we were just getting off of watching the new episode at the time. Which actually kind of brings me into one of my pieces of trivia. I'll just get that out of the way now. Is that this movie is set after the events of the Battle City Finals, but the US theatrical release was August 13th, 2004. So it ended up premiering right before the second part of Yugi's duel with Merit, which is kind of funny because like literally that opening montage is just like showing clips of Battle City where Yugi's beating everybody, and then at the very end of that they show Merrick handing off the Winged Dragon of Ra. So it's just like, okay, I guess that's how that ends.
Should put a spoiler warning in front of the movie.
At that point I was already like looking up plot synopses of the Japanese episodes because I was a little bit more of a badass than my other friends. But so I knew basically how the Battle City Finals were going to happen before they happened in the dub, but then just like seeing it on the big screen, it's like, well, I guess that confirms it. So I do have that kind of memory of going to see it as a kid on the big screen. The Japanese version is slightly longer. The English version is about a 90-minute runtime, and the Japanese version is about 101 minutes. The differences are pretty subtle. The main one that I noticed was the opening scene with Yugi assembling the puzzle is a little bit longer. They added a couple little shots here and there. Like there's a little shot of Kuribo peering out from the corner of Yugi's bed, and there's like this whole like little bit of Grandpa looking into the room.
まさか本当に完成させるとはな。じゃが千年パズルを完成させた者は闇の力の支配者となる。わしは孫に重い宿命を背負わせてしまったのかもしれん。
But yeah, there's like a couple little bits there that I guess kind of flesh it out a little more and make it feel a little less rushed. Maybe give it a little more room to breathe. Overall, thoughts on the film, like, I would say it's probably the worst of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Movies. It has the worst Rotten Tomatoes score, which is another thing I wanted to I have to bring up. This movie had the lowest score of any animated movie on Rotten Tomatoes, sitting at 5%, until it was dethroned by a movie called Happily Never After, which made it to 4%. It was also the lowest rated animated movie on Metacritic until it was dethroned by the Emoji Movie. So for a good minute, it was just like the reigning king of bad reviews. I do have some fun with it, but also I am picturing the critics who were not familiar with the franchise going into this one and just think, oh man, I'm sorry you had to do that to yourself. Like,
it is pretty unapproachable if you're unfamiliar with the material, like even outside of its general quality. Again, in a way, like the Digimon movies or even the Pokemon movies, like they require some level, like baseline knowledge, I suppose, but they're a lot more approachable than this one, I would say.
Yeah.
I think the overall problem with like all the Yu-Gi-Oh movies in general is that it requires too much context of the series.
I think that it's basically made to sell more cards, and it was basically made with kind of Hollywood cynicism fueling it, which is not great, but like there's fun stuff in there. I also really like the Mindscape stuff. I think that's really where the movie's at its strongest. Anubis, he could have been a cool villain. He could have been, but he just wasn't. Like, I really wish that design-wise they had like based him off of the actual Egyptian god Anubis.
Even when I was younger and I watched it the first time, I was so disappointed when they finally revealed his true design.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my god, they just totally missed an opportunity to make him look actually cool. They also didn't develop him very much. Like, even when he comes into Duel, like, there really isn't anything there. Like, most of the movie is Yugi and Kaiba, and then Anubis comes in, and he's defeated relatively quickly.
Yeah, I think they could have done more with him to make him interesting, but yeah, like the Mindscape stuff was really cool. I do really like the idea of while Yugi and Kaiba are having this petty duel, there's this stuff going on where everybody's trapped inside the puzzle. Like that was a neat idea, and like that stuff is definitely the most interesting stuff in the movie. And honestly, the funnest part of the movie is just like watching everybody beat the shit out of these zombie mummies. It's just like totally like unexpected left turn for a Yu-Gi-Oh movie, and I'm here for it. And then like at the very end, Anubis is kind of cool where it just becomes that like slime scaly monster design with just a giant axe blade on his forehead. Like that part was cool. But then, like, the way they beat him is just like, I use my cards. That's just kind of goofy, but it's Yu-Gi-Oh, so I'll allow goofy. It's fine.
Yu-Gi-Oh does that all the time.
Yeah. Now I think I'll move on to the trivia stuff. There were 2 ADR directors on this film, both of which were voice actors at 4Kids, which it's not uncommon in anime dubbing for the ADR director to be a voice actor on the crew. So the lead ADR director was Eric Stewart, pretty notable actor who worked on the series. He was the voice of Kaiba, who's also voiced Brock in Pokemon and also James. He voiced Gowry in the Slayer series. He's done a lot of like work in 4Kids and Central Park Media stuff. An additional ADR director on the film was Christopher Collett. He voiced a couple of like additional roles in the series. He's mostly known for his roles as Umbra and Johnny Steps. His first acting credit is Paul from Sleepaway Camp. That's right, folks. The love interest who got killed at the end of Sleepaway Camp went on to be ADR director of the Yu-Gi-Oh movie, which, by the way, is his only directing credit. Something you may have noticed is that the cards have the English text on them. The reason why they didn't in the English release of the anime series is that they had to comply with FCC regulations to make this not like a just full-on commercial for the product. So they had to kind of mask it a little bit and not make it look identical to the product. But since this is a movie, this doesn't fall under those same regulations, so they were able to actually show the text on the cards. So I'll end this on a high note. This was the 3rd highest grossing Japanese animated film in the US box office for several years. The number 1 is still Pokemon, the first movie, and the number 2 for a long time was Pokemon the movie 2000. This year, the number 2 spot was taken by Demon Slayer, the movie Mugen Train. So yeah, let's move on to our last movie for this discussion, which is Yu-Gi-Oh! Bonds Beyond Time, which was a 2010 50-minute film released to commemorate the 10th anniversary of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters anime. This film was directed by Kenichi Takeshita. He's mostly directed like single episode stuff. His prior film directing credits include the Fate Stay Night Unlimited Blade Works movie, which he co-directed with Yuji Yamaguchi. And his first directing credit is Amon Apocalypse of Devilman, which I think that's in particular very interesting because Kazuki Takahashi has stated that one of his biggest influences for the original Yu-Gi-Oh! Manga was the Devilman series. So it's interesting that we have someone who directed something for both. I think that's kind of cool. But yeah, this movie is basically just like a little 50-minute story about the first 3 protagonists, Yugi Muto, Jaden Yuki or Judai Yuki, depending on where you live, and Yusei Fudo, all teaming up to defeat this time-traveling bad guy known as Paradox, who has come to stop the Duel Monsters game because it's going to ravage the world. Funniest thing about that I saw recently was there's this young adult author, Jiran J. Zhao, who, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. They recently wrote a very successful novel called Iron Widow, but they are a big fan of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Series, and they tweeted something out that was talking about that movie where it's just like, can't believe there was that movie where a guy went, "Hey yo, we need to nip this card game in the bud because I'm from the future and it's gonna destroy the world." And all of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Protagonists were just like, "Fake news, let's kill him!"
Kick his ass. Card games rule. Fuck you.
But yeah, let's just talk a bit about the movie. Ethan, we'll start with you.
Yeah, well, first of all, don't forget the full title, Yu-Gi-Oh! 3D, The Bonds Beyond Time.
Oh yeah, that's right. It was originally released in theaters in 3D, which I unfortunately was not able to make it to. This is the only Yu-Gi-Oh! Movie, besides the 99 one, obviously, that I haven't seen in the theater. And if it ever gets re-released, I'm gonna go see it.
And, boy, howdy, can you tell that it's 3D at times? Because there are some graphics. There's some graphics in this movie that are not good. There's some monster animation that looks fine, that looks solid enough. But man, when Yusei is driving down the streets of PS2 game with smoothing filter on, it's a little rough. But honestly, for a crossover film, like crossover films are always going to be pretty rough around the edges. For the runtime they were given and everything, I appreciate that a lot of it is based on, at the very least, those 3 protagonists interacting. That's going to be the fun part, is seeing how they kind of play off each other. It's not super interesting because they're mostly just like being relatively unfamiliar with the 3 series. I feel like Yusei is acting out of character, but that might be just because like his arc has come to a close in his series. Because I remember watching a few episodes of that and him being sort of a distant loner, but then again, there was a whole series for him to do a character development in between then. But like, yeah, just the way everyone's sort of bouncing off each other and being like, "Good job, buddy. Nice one, Jaden. Yeah, Yugi, you're the best." Just everyone sort of complimenting each other and telling them how cool they are. I find that weirdly very charming in a way. I will admit, as someone who was not familiar, I was kind of baffled by Jaden hanging out with what seemed to be a demon lady and a Chinese stereotype man. I don't know if this is a thing in his Japanese performance, but in his English performance, he is doing an accent that does kind of make me tug on my collar a little bit.
乗ってみたいんだな、10代君は。急に現れるなって、優勢が驚くだろ。僕たちを見たくらいでは驚かないさ。彼も強力な精霊の力を宿しているにゃ。
Yusei is from another time.
Another time? Quit messing with me. Besides, how would you guys know?
We know because, like you, Yusei has a gift.
A gift that connects him to the world of duel monster spirits.
But he has a cute cat, so I'll let it slide this once. The actual animation and the framing, like coming off of Pyramid of Light, is pretty dynamic and engaging, honestly. Like, I think part of that is to push the 3D effect, but I think having a better director working on it, by all accounts, because like Amon is not the best Devilman thing, but it's solid. And the Fate series obviously is well known for looking pretty. And I think that works. Like, I think it's a good, fun showcase in the way Pyramid of Light feels kind of like soulless and Hollywood. This feels a little soulless, but there's just enough like creative energy pumped into it that it's still fun.
Yeah.
Paradox is weird. Like, I don't know, like, why are you gonna make your masked villain a masked villain and then reveal that he's somebody we don't know? It's still a weird thing to me. Like, oh, hey, it's that guy from... Who are you again?
Technically, Bonds Beyond Time is a 5Ds movie, and Paradox is in 5Ds.
Ah, I see.
You don't see him as a character, but you see allusions to him, because Bonds Beyond Time is actually canon to the 5D storyline. Paradox is actually part of this group. They allude to him, they kind of show him, and then they reference him again around the 5D's finale.
Oh, that's actually really cool. Okay, that makes sense. He does kind of, I don't know, look more like a 5D's character. Overall, sort of final thoughts on it. I had a fun time with it, even not being intimately familiar with like Jaden or Yusei outside of, the handful of episodes I caught of their respective series. It's a breezy too. The fact that it's only, 50 some odd minutes. I would like to see like more cast interaction, because you see the cast of the respective series crop up very briefly, and I think that's sort of the fun of a crossover thing, is seeing not just how the leads would interact, but also like, I don't know, like how would Tristan interact with Leo? Those are two names. Yeah, because you don't see any of Jaden's supporting cast too. I would feel like, so, well, I guess aside from Demon and Stereotype and Cat.
The thing about Jaden is that it's actually consistent with the canonical ending of GX. So it's one of those things where it's like, oh, I would love to see more of the GX cast, but the time period that Jaden is coming from, it wouldn't make any sense for him to be interacting with the other characters.
Okay, that makes sense then. I just feel, yeah, for like the purpose of a crossover movie, but even then, like, I get it. Like, you can only have so many interactions, and he has his spirit guardian character. I don't know what they are, so I'm not gonna make any.
I agree with you though. Like, I think that was like a missed opportunity to have more character interactions. Like, I was actually disappointed this movie wasn't longer. Like, I felt like Pyramid of Light was way too long. It was empty. Whereas Bonds Beyond Time, I feel like it could have been longer and they could have explored the idea a lot more. Because I'm going to be fully honest, I actually loved Bonds Beyond Time watching it. For this podcast. Yes, I actually really liked it. And I guess for some background, so when it came out, that was when I was actually getting into Yu-Gi-Oh! For the first time. So when I watched it, I had only seen Duel Monsters and some 5Ds and none of GX. So when I watched it originally, I hated it. I was like, this doesn't make any sense. It's boring. I don't get it. But now, after I watched GX and 5Ds and rewatching it with that context and knowing that it's canonical to 5Ds, it's amazing. Bonds Beyond Time is great, in my opinion. It totally fits in with the plot and the storyline, and everything is canonically consistent with Jaden, with Yusei, and everything. And then the interactions between the three protagonists are really fun. Like, I wish that, like I said, I wish there was more time to kind of explore the relationship with each other. But the duel was really fun too, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would pretty much agree. It's very briskly paced. It doesn't let you get bored, which is good. I do kind of agree. It could have been longer. It could have been a little more fleshed out. Could have had a little more room to breathe. I do think this one is a fun one to watch. I would definitely say a better movie than Pyramid of Light, a better movie than the 99 movie. If you're a fan, I would say check it out. It's not much of your time, and it's a fun watch.
I would say it's great if you're a fan of the spin-offs. I'll be honest, I actually like the spin-offs a lot more than Duel Monsters. So if you're a big like spin-off fan, this movie is probably amazing. Like, especially compared to the 99 movie in Pyramid of Light. It's great. I like it. One of the like awesome part is that you've got everyone's main monster going for like the final blow. I thought that was really cool. I don't know. Like I said, I love this movie, so I'm biased because I love I love 5Ds and GX so much.
I actually have like 2 comments about that. Watching it, I get the sense that the Duel Monsters element of it, like you can understand that like watching a single episode of Duel Monsters. All you really need to know is like the basic group dynamic, and Yugi loves his grandpa, and he has a ghost living inside of him. But you know, all the normal teenage stuff. Who doesn't in Yu-Gi-Oh? You know, teenage stuff, hang out with your friends, play card games, ghost. Whereas like GX and 5Ds, particularly GX, just because, you know, he has 2 ghosts living with him, not inside of him, but, you know, they're hanging out.
So Yubel and Judai actually merged together in the end of season 3 of GX. So Yubel is actually inside of Jaden, whereas the other ghost, the guy with the long hair and the glasses, his ghost is actually inside the cat.
Oh my god, I love that. That's incredibly good context. Now I need to watch GX to see that delightful cat be haunted by this delightful stereotype.
Yeah, because basically Judai's professor dies, and his spirit is trying to ascend to heaven, and the cat swallows his spirit, so he's not able to move on.
It's just like Garfield. It's just like... Oh, I love that, actually. That's incredibly charming.
I like the difference between Yugi and Jaden's reaction to synchro summoning, because I like how Yugi was like confused, like, what the heck is a synchro summon? And Judai was like, man, that's so cool. Like, he was totally unfazed by a new summoning mechanic. He was just like, that's so neat. But Yugi's like the old grandpa, like, what the heck is a synchro summon?
I dig that. Like, I feel like it is in character, too. Like,
back in my day, my extra deck was purple, and we called it the fusion deck.
The biggest thing with crossover films, too, is because it always sort of, like, engages the fan fiction part of people's brains, where it's like, well, I wanted to see this character interaction with this character interaction. Like, I wanted to see Joey Wheeler duel with Crow, or Jack duel with Kaiba. But, like, for what it is, like not evaluating the film we could have had, but just evaluating the one we did get, I would say pretty good, even without context. And I imagine, clearly very good if you do have context.
Yeah, and I do think that it's a shame that we haven't gotten more movies for the spin-offs. Like, even as someone who does favor the original cast of characters, like, I think after Dark Side of Dimensions, like, they've had their time in the sun. I think it's time to give a little more attention to some of the spin-offs. So that's gonna do it for this vidcast. Thank you all for watching. Leave a comment below and let us know, what is your favorite Yu-Gi-Oh movie? What's your favorite Yu-Gi-Oh monster? What's your favorite Yu-Gi-Oh series? Let us know. And be sure to give us a like if you like the video, and subscribe to us if you want to see more of our videos. And then hit the bell icon, because I guess subscribing doesn't do enough. Thank you for tuning in. Be sure to check out our podcast on Yu-Gi-Oh! Dark Side of Dimensions. We will see you then. Farewell.
Farewell.
I imagine, like, myself trying to get Pete Timmerman to watch this movie, and Pete's just like, Tim, I'm taking your degree away.
Just slid my ticket across the table and I said, sorry guys, I gotta see about a girl.